Lakshmi Pichai sat quietly in the third row, near the edge of the aisle. The red carpet glowed under the soft morning sunlight that filtered in through the tall glass windows of the Grand Convention Center. It was the National Innovators Forum, an annual event that brought together scientists, entrepreneurs, and changemakers from across India. The stage was draped in white and gold, decorated with fresh marigolds. Giant screens displayed the names of honored guests, but her name wasn't. There no one really noticed her. She wore a simple blue sari, with a small pin on her shoulder that read, "Founder Clean Roots." There was no entourage around her, no camera flashes. She didn't carry a fancy bag or wear expensive jewelry. The only thing she carried was a folder with a speech she had written, just in case someone gave her a chance. Lakshmi had been invited, yes, but not as a speaker, not as an honoree. She was given a standard pass and told there may be time for a panel audience question, maybe, around her. There were men in dark suits talking loudly. Some had badges that said VIP. They checked their watches. They checked their phones. They barely looked at her. One man even stepped on her foot by mistake and just kept walking. She didn't flinch. She was used to this. Lakshmi had grown up in a village where clean water was a dream, where women walked 6 kilometers to get buckets of water, often filled with mud and disease. She had seen her younger brother fall sick because of it. She had promised herself that one day she would fix it, and she had. After years of work, she created a low-cost water purification system that could run without electricity. She tested it. She improved it. She used her savings. She carried it. 2 different towns. People called her mad. Some laughed. Some just ignored her. But some listened. Some got better. And soon schools in nearby areas started using her system. The news never picked up her story. The big companies never sponsored her work. But she kept going. Today was supposed to be different. She had received an email saying, "We acknowledge your contribution and welcome you to the National Innovators Forum." That was it. No nameplate, no bio, no mention in the booklet. She had come anyway. As the national anthem ended and the lights dimmed, an announcer spoke. "Ladies and gentlemen, please welcome the Prime Minister of India, Shri Narendra Modi ji." The crowd stood and clapped. Phones came out. Photographers clicked. Lakshmi stood too, though she stayed behind as others surged forward. The Prime Minister walked down the center aisle slowly, greeting dignitaries on both sides. He nodded, shook hands, smiled. The announcer listed out the names of prominent guests he was stopping for. Dr. Raghav Menon, Chairman of the Science Council, Ms. Tara Desai, founder of TechLink. Lakshmi took a deep breath and looked down at her hands. She had long stopped expecting recognition. She was just glad to be in the same room. Then something strange happened. The Prime Minister suddenly stopped walking, right in front of her row. He turned slightly. The announcer paused mid-sentence. Everyone looked confused. Modi ji looked directly at Lakshmi. He took a step toward her. A hush fell over the room. She looked up, unsure if he was looking at someone behind her. She turned her head. No one else. Just her. "Are you Lakshmi Pichai?" he asked gently. She nodded slowly, heart racing. "You created the Clean Roots system, didn't you?" She swallowed hard. "Yes, sir, I did." He smiled and extended his hand. "I've been wanting to meet you." The room was silent. Cameras froze. A few phones dropped. Lakshmi's hand shook as she placed it in his dot. He turned toward the announcer and said, "We'll begin by hearing from the woman who brought clean water to forgotten places." Gasps echoed across the auditorium. Lakshmi's eyes filled with tears, but she held them back. She wasn't just in the room now. She was the reason the room had paused, and that changed everything. The moment felt like a dream. Lakshmi stood frozen, her hand still trembling from the Prime Minister's handshake. The stage lights, once far away, now pointed toward her. The sea of faces that had once ignored her were now turned fully in her direction. Whispers spread like wind through tall grass. The organizers scrambled behind the scenes. Someone rushed to bring a microphone. Another unrolled a fresh name banner and wrote, "Lakshmi Pichai, Clean Roots Foundation," in bold letters. A security officer gently motioned her forward. "Ma'am, this way, please." She walked slowly, unsure if her legs would carry her all the way. Her sandals echoed softly against the polished floor as she climbed the steps to the stage. Each step felt heavier than the last. It wasn't nerves. It was years of carrying silence. Now, she was being asked to speak to a crowd that had already judged her by her clothes, her silence, her place in the third row. The hall quieted. A single chair was placed on stage beside the other dignitaries. Modi ji himself pulled it back. For her, Lakshmi sat down. A man from the panel whispered, "Congrats. I didn't know your name before. My mistake." She nodded politely. Inside, her heart beat like a drum. The same people who hadn't seen her earlier were now leaning in to hear her story. The host cleared his throat and said, "Before we move on to our scheduled keynotes, the Prime Minister has requested that we first hear from Ms. Lakshmi Pichai. Please share your journey." The mic was handed to her. She held it carefully, like it might slip from her fingers. She looked at the crowd: ministers, tech leaders, entrepreneurs, press, students. All eyes were on her. She closed her eyes briefly and took a deep breath. Then, she began. "I am not used to microphones," she said softly, "but I am used to speaking when it matters." A murmur of agreement rippled through the room. "I come from a place where water is more precious than gold, where my mother walked 2 hours every day just to fill one pot, where children get sick because their only option is dirty ponds. I lost my brother that way. I was 12. He was 8. She paused. The crowd listened in stillness. "When I grew up, I studied biology, not in a fancy university, just in a local college. I learned about filtration, pressure, and gravity. And then I started building. I made mistakes. Many. I burned my hands with chemicals. I ran out of money. I was called foolish. I was told this won't work, single quotes, ... but I kept going." Someone near the front wiped their eyes. "I didn't do this for awards. I did it so little girls like my niece don't have to walk 6 kilometers like my mother did. So little boys don't have to die like my brother." Modi ji leaned forward, visibly moved. "My device doesn't look like much. It's made from local parts. It works without power. I tested it in over 20 villages. Not one of them made the news. But the smiles of those children, the clean hands of their mothers, that was enough for me." She paused again, until, "Today, ... I thought maybe I didn't belong in rooms like this. But maybe that was wrong. Maybe we all belong in this room if we're building something that helps others." A standing ovation began. It started slow, one person in the back, then another, then the front rows, then the side balconies, and then Modi ji stood again. He placed his hand over his heart. Then he turned to the organizers and said, "Let's make her the opening keynote for next year, and let's send her team the full support they need." Lakshmi lowered her head slightly. The tears she had held back now escaped. It was not pride. It was relief. After years of being invisible, she had finally been seen, but she didn't know this was just the beginning. Outside the hall, a journalist quietly called his editor and said, "We need to rewrite tomorrow's front page. She's the real story." The morning after the forum, the entire country woke up to a new name trending across social media, news outlets, and television screens. Lakshmi Pichai. No fancy makeup. No big brand clothes. No $1 million startup. Just a woman with a folder, a quiet voice, and a heart that had carried entire villages. Headlines poured in. The woman who stole the show from the stage of silence. Lakshmi Pichai, the innovator we should have honored long ago. Modi ji's gesture makes history. Real change begins with recognition. Lakshmi didn't even own a TV. She found out about the coverage when her neighbor ran over, holding up a torn newspaper. Didi, you are on the front page. Look, look. Even my son recognized you from school. Lakshmi blinked in surprise. Her face was there, smiling awkwardly from the stage, the microphone still in her hand. Next to her was the Prime Minister. Mid-applause. Her phone began ringing non-stop. Calls from NGOs, from journalists, from local leaders. But one call stood out. A woman's voice came through the line, soft and steady. Namaste, Ms. Pichai. This is Dr. Meena Rao, from the National Science Funding Board. We've reviewed your project and would like to fully support the Clean Roots expansion. Your work deserves reach, not restriction. Can we meet? Lakshmi could barely speak. She whispered, yes, of course. Hours later, her small one-room office was filled with visitors. 2 scientists sat cross-legged on the floor, asking questions about her design. A journalist scribbled quotes while sipping chai. One local politician dropped by just to shake her hand and ask for a photo. But the attention wasn't all warm. As the spotlight grew, so did the shadows. A man wearing expensive shoes and sunglasses knocked on her office door. He didn't smile. Ms. P. Chai. I'm Rajat Mel. I represent a water tech company that has patents similar to your model. We'd like to discuss rights and ownership before this goes further. She narrowed her eyes. I built my system myself. He smiled, but it didn't reach his eyes. Yes, but your filtration method, the layered gravel structure, that concept is dangerously close to our pending patent. We can't afford confusion in the market. I used stones from my backyard, she said calmly. No legal document. Owns the earth. He leaned in, lowering his voice. You're gaining attention. You don't want lawsuits. We could help you, ... if you join us. Lakshmi looked around her humble room. No fan, no staff. Just charts, prototypes, and a kettle. I didn't build this to join anyone. I built it to free people from depending on anyone. He frowned and walked out. The journalist who overheard the conversation later published an article titled, "They Tried to Buy Her Silence. She Chose to Speak Louder." Meanwhile, Modi ji's office reached out again. His advisor said, Sir was deeply moved. He wants to set up a direct pilot program using your system. 20 villages, government support. You'll be in charge. Lakshmi hesitated. She wasn't afraid of the responsibility, but she knew what came with it: attention, pressure, and the anger of powerful companies who didn't like competition from someone without a brand. I will do it, she finally said, but on one condition. What's that, ma'am? Don't put my name on the label. Just write, Clean Water by Clean Roots. This isn't about me. It never was. The advisor paused. Understood. But whether your name is on it or not, people already know who gave them hope. As the first shipments rolled out, volunteers from her hometown helped build the units. Students from engineering colleges joined the mission. Someone made a website overnight. Another person printed t-shirts that read, Clean Roots, Real. Change flows from here. But the man from the water tech company wasn't done yet. Behind closed doors, they prepared a legal team. They were not going to let a village woman disrupt an industry worth billions, and Lakshmi. She had no idea how hard the next few weeks were about to become. Lakshmi Pichai sat under the old neem tree outside her one-room office, holding a small clay cup of chai. It was early morning, but the heat was already building. She stared at the list of villages scheduled for the Clean Roots rollout. 20 communities, thousands of lives, all about to receive clean water for the first time. But behind the smiles and support, something darker was moving. A thin envelope arrived by courier. There was no note, just the bold stamp of a law firm. She opened it slowly. It was a legal notice. The company that once tried to buy her idea now accused her of intellectual property infringement, claiming she had copied a concept they filed 4 years ago. They demanded she stop production immediately or face court action. Lakshmi read the words carefully. Her hands shook, not from fear, but from the weight of injustice. She had built Clean Roots from the ground up, from scraps, from trial and error, from burned fingers and broken hopes. She had no lawyers, number investors, no patents, just results, just people whose lives had changed. She called the advisor from Modi ji's office. "They've sent me a legal notice. They want me to stop everything." The advisor's voice was firm. "Don't worry, we've seen the design. We'll support you. But it's going to be messy. They're powerful." Lakshmi exhaled slowly. "I didn't come this far to stop now." That evening, news broke that Clean Roots was being challenged in court. The media rushed in with headlines. Rural innovator faces lawsuit from water tech giant Clean Water, or stolen idea. Legal storm surrounds Lakshmi Pichai. Talk shows debated. Anchors argued. Some said she was a symbol of hope. Others questioned her credibility. Online comments turned brutal. Who even is she? Probably copied something from YouTube, just wants sympathy. Modi ji got fooled by a village woman. Lakshmi didn't answer any of them. Instead, she traveled. She personally visited the villages where her systems had already been installed. She spoke with mothers, teachers, and children. She collected handwritten letters, photos, and water test results. She gathered every voice that had ever tasted change because of Clean Roots. A week later, she walked into the courtroom with a steel lunchbox in one hand and a folder in the other. The courtroom was cold and sharp, filled with polished shoes and expensive suits. The company's lawyers stood tall, voice steady. "Your Honor, this is not a case of poverty versus power. It's about protecting ideas. Ms. Pichai's device closely resembles our patented system, filed in 2019. We respect her efforts, but we must protect our rights." Lakshmi stood next. She wore a plain cotton sari. No lawyer, no notepad. She spoke calmly. "I built Clean Roots using local materials. I used gravity. I used charcoal. I used the same knowledge our grandmothers used in their clay pots and sand filters. If science belongs to companies, then tradition must belong to the earth." She paused. "But more than that, I brought proof." She opened her folder. Testimonies and timelines, photographs of her early prototypes, dated long before the company's patent, village council certificates, and one powerful photo, her brother's small grave, marked only by a stone. "I didn't build this for profit. I built this so no child would have to die like mine did." The judge took the folder and began reading. Days passed. The court remained silent, but the people did not. Videos of Lakshmi's speech flooded the internet. Celebrities tweeted support. Young inventors offered legal help. Students started the #IST, and with LAKSHMI. A retired judge posted, "If innovation is only measured in profits, then we will miss every quiet genius born in struggle." Finally, the verdict came. The court finds no violation. Clean Roots was developed independently, using open-source principles and traditional techniques. The suit is dismissed. Lakshmi sat still for a moment, not smiling, just breathing. Outside the court, a crowd had gathered. Reporters rushed forward. Someone handed her flowers. Children from a nearby school chanted her name. But she looked past them, toward the sky, and whispered quietly to herself, "We keep flowing, like water." The company said nothing more. They disappeared from the headlines. But Lakshmi, DIDN single quotes T, her victory became more than a legal win. It became a signal to every forgotten innovator, every village girl with an idea. Weeks had passed since the court ruling. Lakshmi Pichai's name now meant something more than just a small invention. It meant courage. It meant quiet strength. She was no longer just a woman from the third row. She had become a symbol, but she never let it change her. Every morning she still boiled her tea on a small stove. She still swept her porch before visitors arrived, and she still spent time with the children at the nearby school, where she had once taught part-time just to keep her dream alive. One afternoon, as the summer heat slowed the village, a worn-out postman arrived with a parcel. No return address. Just a simple note. For Ms. Lakshmi Pichai, personal. She opened it carefully. Inside was a letter. The paper was yellowed at the edges, the handwriting old but strong. Dear Lakshmi, I don't know if this will ever reach you. My name is Madhav Pichai. I am your father. If you are reading this, it means you've grown up and made your own path. I left when you were just 6. I was weak. I failed to be the father you needed. But not a day passed where I didn't think of you. I once tried to create a simple machine to clean river water, but I failed. No one listened. They laughed. I left because I thought leaving would save you from my shame. If you ever become a woman who helps others, remember your strength didn't come from me. It came from your mother, from her silence, from her patience. But if anything of me lives on in you, then maybe my mistakes were not in vain. I'm sorry I was not there, but I'm proud if you're reading this. Lakshmi sat still for a long time. The sun moved across the floor. The sounds of the village returned. A dog barked. Someone called for tea. But she stayed silent, her eyes fixed on the words of a man she barely remembered. For years, she had thought he'd abandoned them without reason. She had locked away that hurt. Now, it returned, not as pain, but as understanding. She folded the letter and placed it inside her folder, the same folder she carried everywhere. She didn't cry. Not this time. The tears had been shed long ago. Now, only peace remained. That evening, she spoke to a group of students visiting her center. When people leave you, she told them, they leave behind two things: pain and purpose. You must decide which one to carry. A girl raised her hand. Didi, will you teach us how to build a clean root system? Lakshmi smiled. I will teach you something more important first. How to believe in your own hands. The next week, a new program launched. Clean Roots. Build, learn, lead. Hundreds of young girls signed up. Some traveled from far-off towns. Some came barefoot. Some came carrying notebooks with pages falling out. But they all came with hope. Modi Ji sent another letter. Dear Lakshmi, what began as one speech has now become a movement. We want to honor your work with the Rashtriya Seva Award this Republic Day. But more than that, we wish to invite you to lead the National Rural Innovation Council. Your voice has shown us the power of silent heroes. We need that voice to shape the future. Lakshmi read the letter slowly. She thought of her mother, her brother, and now her father. Then she looked at the wall, where a small hand-drawn sign hung. A child had made it after visiting. It said, "Water is life. Didi gives life." She folded the letter and placed it beside her father's, and quietly, she whispered, "We're just getting started." It was Republic Day. The grounds of Rajpath shimmered under a pale winter sun. Flags fluttered gently in the breeze. Rows of decorated chairs lined the open field, filled with leaders, veterans, scientists, farmers, teachers, and children. Every camera was pointed toward the stage, but eyes kept drifting to the special guest in the front row, Lakshmi Pichai. She wore the same simple blue sari she had worn the day Modi Ji first stopped to greet her. No makeup, no designer shoes. Just a calm presence and a folded speech in her lap. But this time, her name wasn't left out. Her seat had a golden tag that read, Lakshmi Pichai, National Changemaker. A young girl from a nearby village ran up and handed her a drawing. It showed a woman pouring water into a bowl, with children dancing around her. "This is you," the girl said shyly. Lakshmi took the drawing and nodded gently. And you're the reason I do this. When the award ceremony began, dignitaries stepped forward, one by one. Applause filled the air, but when Lakshmi's name was called, something different happened. The Prime Minister himself stood. He didn't just clap. He walked down from the stage and met her where she stood. The entire crowd rose to its feet. Lakshmi accepted the medal quietly, with both hands, then turned to the audience and bowed. A reporter whispered into his mic, "Never has a woman so soft-spoken made a nation stand taller." Later that evening, at the National Rural Innovation Council's first session, Lakshmi was seated at the head table. She looked around at a room full of thinkers, leaders, and inventors. Most had degrees, medals, recognition, and yet, everyone listened when she spoke. "Innovation is not just about machines," she began. "It's about memory, about dignity. When you solve a problem no one else sees, you become a light for those left in the dark." The council agreed to fund over 50 grassroots projects led by rural women. The Clean Roots system would now be part of the national curriculum, and for the first time, young girls in village schools would be taught how to build, repair, and redesign water systems themselves. As the weeks passed, Lakshmi returned home, not to rest, but to rebuild the tiny workshop behind her house into a full training center. She named it the Third Row Institute. Someone asked her why. She smiled, "Because that's where I was sitting when the world finally saw me." In a quiet corner of her office, she placed 3 things on the shelf: her mother's water pot, worn and cracked from years of use, her father's letter, now framed with care, and a small photo of her brother, holding a dirty cup of water. Next to them, she placed the medal, not to show off, but to remind herself, and anyone who came through her doors, that change doesn't begin with power, it begins with one person who refuses to give up. Months passed, and seasons changed. The trees outside Lakshmi Pichai's institute dropped their old leaves and grew new ones. Just like the women who walked through her doors, they came in silence, and they left with purpose. Every morning Lakshmi arrived early, sweeping the courtyard herself before any student showed up. She didn't let the medal change her routine. She still packed her own lunch. She still used the same wooden stool to fix filters. Her photo might have reached 1,000,000 screens, but in her heart, she was still the girl who once sat in the third row, unnoticed. One morning, she stood under the neem tree and looked around. Young women were hammering frames, testing filters, running water pressure checks. One girl with oil-stained hands came running and said, "Didi, we fixed the overflow valve. It works now." Lakshmi smiled and replied, "Then teach it to the next one." A few days later, a letter arrived. This time, not from Delhi. It was handwritten. From a small girl named Dia, in Bihar. "Dear Lakshmi Didi, my father got sick last year because of the bad water. Our school now has your filter. He's better now. I want to build one too. I want to be like you." Lakshmi folded the letter with care and placed it in her growing drawer of letters from across the country. The impact of Clean Roots had grown, far beyond what she had imagined. Over 500 villages now had her system. More than 1,000 students were learning how to build them. And now, for the first time, Clean Roots was being tested in flood zones, where water was everywhere but never safe to drink. One morning, as Lakshmi walked to the classroom, she was surprised to see a familiar face waiting outside. Lakshmi Pichai. He stepped forward and greeted her with folded hands. "I came to thank you," he said, "and to tell your journey reminded me of my own mother." They spoke under the tree for hours, about struggle, about silence, about how sometimes the biggest ideas grow from the smallest spaces. Before he left, he asked, "What do you want next?" Lakshmi looked at the sky and said, "I don't want awards. I want this work to outlive me. I want clean water to be so normal that no girl ever needs to invent it again." He nodded. "Then let's build something bigger." With his support, Clean Roots went global. A new branch opened in Africa, guided by women trained at the Third Row Institute. International students came to learn the model. Her team started translating manuals into different languages. Every time someone said, "But she's just a village woman," Lakshmi smiled quietly, because that was the truth, and also the power. Years later, the original Clean Roots system was placed in the National Museum of Innovation. The plaque read, "This simple filter saved lives," started a movement, and proved that greatness begins quietly, on the last day of every month. Lakshmi still walked alone to her brother's grave, under the old tree, near her childhood home. She poured fresh water near the stone, sat down, and whispered the names of all the places now drinking clean water. "This one is for you," she'd say. Then she'd stand up, dust her hands, and walk away, not to rest, but to keep going. Because the river doesn't stop after reaching one village, it keeps flowing, and so did she.